Okay,
Great.
so thank you everybody for coming to this presentation to learn a little bit about our group here. So I'm Kylie Clay with the Forest Carbon and Climate Program. I'll be presenting today alongside Lauren Cooper, who's calling in from Mexico. And so our presentation today is primarily just to give you a snapshot of the types of activities that we're up to. When do you want to go to the agenda? So first Lauren will do an overview of what FCCP is, where it started from, its history, and how it's grown over the last 8 years. And then we'll give an overview of the types of activities we're involved in, starting with various training and engagement, different sort of knowledge transfer activities. And then those that exist, those that are in development that we're currently working on. And then Lauren will also talk about some of the Michigan engagement that we've had. And then I will go into some of the forest carbon research that we are actively involved with. So that's what's on tap for the day. And Lauren, I'll let you start it off.
Great. Well, I can't see everyone in the room, but hi, everybody. And thanks so much for joining us today. We're excited to share a little bit more about the range of things that we work on. And it's a bit of a challenge to subset some of the topics here. So we're going to, in some ways, move a little bit quickly, and then looking forward to hearing Kylie leading up on some of the key research that we have. But also note that we have a lot of additional information on the things we'll be sharing on our website. So if something piques your interest, there's more to be found on our website on all of this. And we also have a fair amount of additional research and projects that we won't get to touch on today. So just to give you a heads up on that. To kind of start it off, I want to start by showing our pretty stellar team that we have. We have a lot of great leadership and expertise within our team, very interdisciplinary and a wide range of skills. So everything from creative work, video development to carbon modeling. And just wanted to give a shout out to all the people here that really make all of these projects possible. And also flag that we, as you all know, have a leadership change coming up with FCCP, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch with the program and continuing on with some specific research projects. But just a note there that we do have a call out for a new director, and it's a great growth opportunity for the program. And I know there's a lot of excitement about continuing a lot of the great work that we'll be highlighting today. Just to kind of quickly highlight a roadmap in the past, we have been working under this umbrella of Forest Carbon and Climate Program since about 2014, and that was growing off of some of the work we'll show here on our graduate certificate, which was and really still is one of the first of its kind, domestically or internationally, focusing specifically on training for forest carbon. And we've just seen interest really grow rapidly in the forest carbon and climate space since this time. And so it's been a very exciting period of growth, relationship building, exploring partnerships. You can see here launching our open resource library, which I'll touch on briefly, professional short courses, and then an expanding research portfolio that is really becoming very productive. And so we're uniquely positioned to continue to grow and collaborate really across the department with a lot of faculty that are doing a wide range of activities as well. So we view our work as, again, I mentioned, very interdisciplinary. We work in a really dynamic space. So there's everything from carbon storage and emissions and a lot of work there. But there's a lot of other interconnecting topics that we have to be familiar with and be able to navigate. So that's like certification, conservation, wood products and carbon storage and harvested wood products, social sciences, biodiversity, different types of programming for ecosystem services, for example, and we create a wide range of outputs. So we're working in a really dynamic space, and then we're producing everything from short videos to reach certain audiences to peer review publications to reach other types of audiences. And I mentioned when we saw all the faces of folks in the program, but we have very diverse expertise so that so we work really closely together in lots of different ways, but everything from forest ecology to and management to modeling, graphic design, and we find and the stakeholder engagement and different types of writing. And we find this range of expertise to be really crucial to engage with the very wide range of actors that we need to be engaging with in this big and emerging forest and climate discussion. Now I'm going to breeze through some of our training and engagement. Again, we're not going to be able to spend too much time on any of these today. We'd be happy to share the slides here following up, and we have a ton of information on our website as well. I mentioned the graduate certificate, and this is really a visionary program that was started before my time here with faculty here in the department, and we've been able to bring it forward, kind of continuing to refine it. We attract an international and very professional, well, really mixed group of individuals. So we do have participation from our own graduate students, but we also have professionals externally that join just for the certificate or even just to take one course. So these are graduate level, very kind of intensive deep dives into topics, and they can be taken for credit or also not for credit for those that are professionals that maybe already have a degree that they're satisfied with. One of the ways that we've really cut out as a unique program is with USDA funding. We developed a short course back in initially the funding from 2017 and created the short course with different faculty in the department here, including Emily Huff and Dave McFarland and David Rothstein, contributing to this course called Understanding Forest Carbon Management. It's designed for professionals. It really presents all the information front forward. And we do have this, we offer it in Spanish now as well in partnership with USAID and the U.S. Forest Service International Program. So it's really been a very successful training program. We've had cohorts from U.S. states come through and private sector actors. And it's really created a great foundation for us to go forward with additional training and engagement. But it's designed to be completed in something more like 8 weeks. And then just to show, we have a Spanish version that we initially launched in Peru and had a cohort of 100 Peruvians go through, but now we're entering our third cohort with the International Program of the Forest Service in Spanish and have expanded to Latin America. But since that course was developed, we continue to identify growth areas. And one of the ones that we've just completed and launched are intensives, regional intensives. We had another leg of USDA support to create these, and we've just launched 3 deep dive modules in the Pacific Northwest, the Northeast, and the Southeast. So we undertook some analysis here using the RFIA package for R, which was developed within our own department, and created a series of unique images, undertaking some analysis of carbon in different US states and regions. But also a big literature deep dive and created these modules. And we've just also launched some short like white papers that provide some high level insights into this work. So you can find those and download them on our website now. We also are pretty well known for our webinar series that we've been running for something like 4.5 or 5 years now. And we bring this interdisciplinary approach to the Learning Exchange series. This has been in partnership with the Forest Climate Working Group, and now we've created a relationship with the Society of American Foresters to bring this forward. And we have all the recordings of past sessions on our website, but you can see really the range of topics that are presented here, everything from carbon modeling to urban forestry. And so we really bring this interdisciplinary kind of dialogue into how we build the Learning Exchange series. And then just to show, we actually have a parallel one in Spanish as well that comes at it with the same kind of interdisciplinary lens of bringing a wide range of professionals together to learn from one another. And again, we've done this with support from USAID and the U.S. Forest Service International Program. So if you speak Spanish, you can join the last 2 of this session as well. But something to maybe spend a little more time on is our open resource library. So as an extension or as a land grant institution, we really value extension and making sure that information is broadly available. And so really all the projects that we undertake, we are looking at building up this open resource library. And we have a lot of creative capacity in terms of creating unique images or short videos. We have Dave McFarland here using a light board to demonstrate carbon calculations from plot measurements. And we have a YouTube channel that links to our open resource library as well. And so this is a really nice resource that we're constantly contributing to, and we have English and Spanish resources on there. But it's been really rewarding to see our imagery and our designs being used by other professionals in speaking engagements, for example. This is all openly available, and would love to have you take a look to see if there's something that useful for you there. Here's another example. Kylie will touch on a project in a little bit, but we have a project with the U.S. Region 9 of the U.S. Forest Service, and with some members of our team, including Chad Papa, undertook this capacity assessment for U.S. state like DNR type actors on carbon measurements and monitoring and modeling, and created a series of resource guides as a part of that project. And so those are all now available on our open resource library. So you might want to take a look, and leveraging a lot of the designs that we have, but explaining some of the key concepts that a professional would need to start engaging in this topic. And then I'll just touch quickly on some materials that are in development. We have some new modules. So this is an urban forestry module working with Dr. Asia Doughton and some other partners, including SFI and NIAX and American Forests, building out a module on urban forestry. So our concept is that the modules that we're developing can be put together in different combinations for various professionals going forward. And so moving into these other topics, we are looking at synthesizing information, tools and resources that are available it can be kind of overwhelming to jump into the space and look around online. And so part of it is presenting and showing these concepts in an order that can be comprehensible for maybe an urban planner or an urban forester. And so we're digging into the urban forestry space and bringing all the science and research from the mitigation and adaptation side as well. And then we're doing a similar thing with wildland fire. So working with some key partners. This is an emerging project that we have. And again, working with NIAX and Forest Service on addressing the fire topic and making sure that that's a topic we're adequately addressing in our training. And then one partnership to touch on that we're really excited about is with the SUNY ESF program. That's the State University of New York. We have a partnership called the Forest and Climate Visualization Partnership. And this is a really exciting partnership where we're able to leverage hyper-realistic forestry simulations. So this can actually be used even in VR, like head equipment, but you can just make very hyper-realistic videos to put on YouTube as well. But being able to show the changes in forests over space and time, which is one of the biggest challenges in talking about forests and carbon and climate, is it's difficult to communicate what a practice implemented today would look like in 5, 10, 15, 20, or 50 years. And this will allow us to do that in really short periods of time. So it's a really powerful tool. We've been able to work with various partners on some initial projects. And just wanted to highlight this a really exciting partnership that we have here. And here you can see the screenshot of an invasive species focused video that can show the changes in carbon storage over time if invasive species are dealt with and removed, where you have a drop in carbon, but then improved carbon storage and forest health over time versus allowing invasives to take over and increase mortality, and what that would do to your carbon storage. So again, more information on this. We're kind of touching on these at a high level, but a partnership we'd like to make you aware of. And then the last two things that I will touch on here are some of our Michigan engagement. So we're really excited to continue to grow our connections in Michigan and work with faculty in the department that have a lot of great Michigan connections, and we're really committed to making sure our work has an impact for our Michigan partners and the broader Michigan community. So I had an opportunity to serve on the Council on Climate Solutions as a co-lead of the Natural and Working Lands Working Group. and alongside Scott Whitcomb from DNR. And this was a really great opportunity for us to engage in the carbon and climate topics at large and look at it from a really landscape approach, understanding where are our mitigation opportunities, adaptation concerns, and what do we need to be thinking about from really a landscape productivity perspective and landowner perspective to meet a carbon neutrality target at 2050, and what's the role of forests and our working lands in doing that. And so if you're interested, this is available, the recommendations. Worked hard with Scott on this for about a year with very diverse participation across different commodity sectors, but it definitely including forestry and forest lands. And so wanted to make you all aware of this. There's a lot of follow-up work, including an upcoming conference in Detroit on the My Healthy Climate work that's happening in the state. So really exciting and very ambitious conversations happening there that we're really excited to be a part of. Another project to flag as this is the RCPP is a program in the USDA, the NRCS program, where we were able to attract a sizable grant with some key partners, again, including DNR, MDARD, TNC. Huron Pines is a nonprofit NGO up conservation group up north. Arbor Day Foundation. So mixing state level actors and national level partners here. We have developed an ambitious reforestation project. So again, there's more information on this. It's really just getting started right now. And it's the target is to reforest about 16,000 acres across 27 counties. And this is an innovative project because the targeted area will be identified at scale and implemented at scale. Our particular activities are involved in research, so on the carbon and social and economic impact side, and also outreach and knowledge transfer, so boosting capacity and knowledge in the carbon and climate space. But wanted to flag this exciting project for you all. And so with that, I'll hand this back to Kylie to do a bit of a deeper dive here on a research project.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Okay, so similar to the knowledge transfer, work that we've done, this is going to be a quick breeze through, a little sampler platter, if you will, of the type of research we're involved in regarding forest carbon. And as you'll see, to echo that multidisciplinary approach, we come at forest carbon research with different disciplines, multi-methods. So we have statistics and modeling, as well as qualitative coding and surveys and interviews and so forth, and policy analysis. So kind of doing a mix of different methods, different disciplines to approach diverse questions of forest carbon. And they all kind of have that through line there, even though they are coming at it from different angles. So Lauren, you want to still share? Yeah. The first one to talk about is the state level forest carbon modeling project. You can't see all with the image there, with Lauren up there, you can't see all of the partners, but so this has been funded by the Climate Alliance initially, and then it's something we've been doing in partnership with American Forests, NIAX, and the Canadian Forest Service. And what it is so state level forest carbon modeling of both the forest ecosystem and harvested wood products. We're using the CBM CFS3 and ANSI modeling frameworks. Those were developed by the Canadian Forest Service. It's what they use for their GHG accounting, their formal accounting. And what we've been doing is working alongside state DNRs to model carbon impacts of forest management practices and then timber product and use on private and public lands through to 2100. And it's a process-based model. Both are process-based models so we use mathematical models to represent ecological relationships and predict future relationships. So what this has meant is we have developed spent an extraordinary amount of time developing baseline models for states. So far, we've finished Maryland and Pennsylvania. We're next on to the Lake states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and California and Oregon. Those are all happening at the moment. And the process is a lot of time developing baseline understandings of forest carbon, forest management, and harvested wood product use. So it is a data wrangling and literature review and stakeholder engagement exercise to understand how forests are currently being used, and to develop models to project if they are used or managed as they currently are, what that means for what that implies for carbon out to 2100. And so that's our baseline scenario. And then for Maryland and Pennsylvania, we developed 17 to 20 alternative scenarios where we explore what if we managed forests differently? What if we had delayed or extended rotations on X number of acres? What would be the carbon impact through to 2100? What is the annual carbon impact through to 2100? What if we stopped harvest altogether? What is that carbon impact through to 2100? And similarly for harvested wood products, right? What if this is of interest in those states, what if we divert all or a chunk of carbon that's headed toward pulp instead divert it to bioenergy? What are the carbon implications of that? And we take into consideration things like substitution benefits to have those final carbon numbers. California is interested in a lot of other harvested wood product scenarios, things like what if we, this is of interest to folks at MSU, right? What if we divert some carbon to mass timber? What are the carbon implications of doing that over the long term? Using logging residues in a more efficient way, so forth. All sorts of different scenarios that are all really developed with this elaborate engagement with the states and what is realistic for those states, both politically, economically, physically, and what do they want to test as possible scenarios. And so we engage in that analysis, and then as well as interpretation and synthesis of those results to inform policy and agency scale decision making. So if you go to the next slide, Lauren, I'll just look at a snapshot of results. So there we go. The results here are many, and you can actually see on our website, we now have the Maryland and Pennsylvania reports published. And so you can see details of the diverse scenarios that we've modeled and specific parameters that we've used to do that modeling. And the results can look like a number of different things, right? We're modeling a whole ecosystem here and the results can be, how many commodities come out in a given year? What is the total sequestration in a given year? And diverse things here. So what I'm showing here, the figure that you're looking at there is harvested wood product and the forest cumulative fluxes according to scenarios. So here are the different, I think this one has 19 different scenarios. And what is the red dot shows the net emissions if summed across those different categories. So you can see by different scenario, thank you, Lauren, what is the relative to the baseline, what are the net emissions of engaging in this alternative scenario? And so another thing to note that positive numbers represent additional carbon sequestration. So carbon benefit is going to be the negative numbers there. So where the red dot is lowest, that is our maximum or our highest carbon benefit. And a couple of things to note that we've included here. I'm going to step over to this side maybe. And that is, so we're looking at different pools, different categories here. So one way to visualize this, like probably the easiest way, is to look at the no harvest scenario. And this is an unrealistic scenario in a lot of ways. It really is just cutting all harvest aside from, so you have nothing going to the harvested wood product pool aside from things resulting from pests leading to mortality and so forth, right? So no real harvest happening. And this was, as I say, an extreme scenario just to see sort of model what's going to happen. But for the purposes of understanding the figure, it's useful. So you can see that in the forest ecosystem, relative to the baseline, you have a lot more carbon stored in the forest ecosystem relative to the baseline because you're not harvesting. But your net emissions from harvested wood products are much higher because you're continuing to emit. Things are, retired materials are going to landfill and continuing to have emissions, and you have nothing refilling that stock, right? Because very little new is going to harvested wood products. And then you have also, in the absence of harvest happening within Maryland, you have substitution for other carbon intensive products like steel and concrete, which is in orange. And then you also have the realization that not all wood can be substituted with steel and concrete, and you're realistically going to import from neighboring states, right? And so you have leakage happening, a certain percentage leaking out to other states. So that kind of explains what's happening in the different color schemes there. And it's just noting the main thing here is less the absolute numbers. That's sort of less interesting to the states and more the relative numbers of which is leading to the greatest carbon impact over time. And notably, so this is 2050. Notably, things change when you look at 2025, 2050. and 2100, there are short-term benefits, long-term benefits. And so a lot of different things that the states are going to have to weigh as they use these models to inform decision-making. And then Lauren, I'll let you go to the next slide. So this is an additional study that Raju Pokarel and Shivan GC have undertaken with, Chad Pop and I supported that this analysis because it builds directly from the CBM modeling that I was just speaking about. So they essentially take the outputs of that. We produce for them models that are, this is how many different, or what you're getting in terms of commodities. This is the volume of commodities you're getting in every year, according to each of these scenarios. And so Shivan and Raju took that information and looked at a host of interesting things related to the economic components of that, right? The cost of the forest management practices, the costs or the benefits in terms of timber products and other forest commodities, and the benefits in terms of carbon. This one here is showing, I think it's quite interesting, showing the value of the net present value of these different scenarios, depending on how highly carbon is valued. So for instance, quite interesting, extended rotation, which is often something we see in forest carbon projects. You see that it doesn't actually become further analysis. It doesn't actually become an improvement on the baseline. It is not from a cost perspective until you reach above $15 a ton, which is around twice what carbon credits are going for today. And I would say that's probably, as they acknowledge, it's probably an underestimate because it doesn't account for certain things like buffer pools or cost of verification and so forth. That's sort of let's assume that all carbon that you've just stored is going to turn into a credit, which is, which is an overestimate in a lot of ways, but so it's probably even a little higher than that, right? But so that's a really important advancement or development of the initial CBM work. We're very happy to work with Raju on that to kind of give a more complete picture of that carbon modeling. Yes, leaving. Oh, sorry. Want to go to the next slide, Lauren? Okay, so then there's another project also related to carbon modeling that we take from a totally different side, and that is, so we've engaged now. Our team has been working on this carbon modeling in 7 different states. We've undertaken the process, know the data that we need, know the data limitations. Certain states have more than others or more prepared than others, and we've kind of have a strong experience with that. Funded by the U.S. Forest Service Eastern Region, so Region 9, we undertook an analysis, a qualitative analysis of state forest agencies in those regions to assess what their capacity and interest for engaging in forest carbon modeling would be. And I think the Forest Service sees a benefit to that type of analysis and potentially being involved in or funding that type of analysis and wondering what's the capacity and interest out there among states. And so there's also a report on this that you will be able to find online, but really interesting results. So we surveyed and interviewed. There were a couple states that weren't surveyed, but they were interviewed and vice versa, but every state, and most states had both surveys and interviews. And so a lot of really interesting results on sort of where states are in terms of data, in terms of policy understandings and linkages, in terms of communicating results about carbon. So we explored all of those topics and have a lot of interesting results about where there are primary gaps. Folks are very familiar, an overall trend, folks are very familiar with forest inventory data and using FIA summary reports, things like that, and calculations of forest inventory. That's something they're familiar with, but carbon is very much a new space and carbon modeling even more so. So a lot of really interesting and sort of nuanced findings of where those gaps will be. One of the things that Lauren mentioned in the knowledge transfer, the suite of knowledge transfer things that we have going, one of them was those forest carbon resource guides. And so the second part of this project was, first assess interest and capacity to develop some materials to help boost that capacity. And so as part of that, we developed these forest carbon resource guides, which really are kind of more than a simplistic look. They're more like, they're not they're like 13 pages with additional hefty chunks of additional resources to take deeper dives on all of these topics. But they're looking at everything from, forest inventorying data, just what are the different methods, what are the different resources out there that we can, if you wanting to jump into this, understanding uncertainty and modeling. How do we, think about that? Harvested wood products, Raju was part of this part as well and helped us develop the white paper on harvested wood products. What is the data that's available? What are the different considerations? We talk a lot about the considerations that we took into play with our modeling, substitution and leakage, and how are different people thinking about these and modeling them, and where's the uncertainty there? And then also linking results with policy, which is a notable, let's say, gap in how states feel what they feel confident in. Notable gap in what are those leverage points? How can I, we notice, it would be great if folks had delayed harvest from a carbon perspective. How do you, what are the best leverage points to make that happen, right? So there are gaps there. We also had an expert panel with also folks in the room here. So we had an expert panel where folks, after having read those resource guides, which were sort of released sequentially week by week, folks could come, listen to the experts speak about, ask them about underlying questions, after having kind of gone through those materials. So we had Grant Domke, Yvonne Fernandez, Ali Kasiba, Dave McFarland, Raju Pokarel, and this recording is also available up on the website if you want to take a look at that. So another project to note here, and this is also, so it's not forest carbon modeling in the same sense, but it's an extension of that, right? This idea that folks want to care about forest carbon, but wait a second, we don't only care about forest carbon. And so this is a safeguards, social and environmental safeguards project where we were brought on by TNC, the Nature Conservancy, as part of a larger consortium of groups that collectively are the Climate Smart Forest Economy Program. And what they're looking to do is to actively sort of support getting in place initiatives, forest carbon initiatives that will bolster climate smart forestry, climate smart forest economies, I should say. And they're looking at everything from whole country initiatives, Ghana getting involved in bolstering its forest bioeconomy, or they're looking at smaller projects. There was one in Kenya, I believe one in India, that were looking at using mass timber for sort of subsidized housing projects. So diversity in terms of scale, in terms of type, but they all related to climate smart forest economy projects. And the climate smart forest economy program was looking to assess these different projects, right? Which ones do we support? Which ones have, how do we assess, in particular, how do we assess the safeguards associated with each of these projects? And so we were brought in to develop a framework for thinking about social and environmental safeguards relating to forest carbon initiatives. And so this project, one of the many projects that starts out like small and then it grows and grows and grows. But so what we did for this project was we assessed first the safeguards identification and implementation challenges, not specifically for climate smart forest economy projects interventions, because that particular niche, right, is not exactly out there, but we have a lot out there, a lot of information on social environmental safeguards from the development perspective in particular, right? So assessing concerns, challenges that are already out there, and thinking from the perspective of climate smart forest economy and sort of making those connections. And then we did qualitative coding and assessment of all of the existing standards and guidelines out there for engaging in assessing safeguards. And we developed tools to, we're not starting from scratch here, there's a lot available. How do we learn from what's there? How do we know what to borrow from? And so how do we use existing tools and materials in our own assessments? And then through this whole process, we also identified global principles that are needed for a wide range of actors to engage in this space, wide range of actors who have diverse scales, as I noted with the projects, but also diverse capacities, diverse resources and funding. And so how do you have a series of guidelines that will simultaneously apply to those in procurement? How do you, as those involved in small project development, as those at a national government scale, right? So we tried to develop global principles at a very high level that would kind of speak to the whole process. Now look at this figure here also as kind of the step-by-step outputs that we produced in doing this and the way we thought about this. So that was the global guiding principles, that really overarching structure, I would say started it all off. And this I should note, we did this with also engaging in surveys and interviews and so forth. So developing those global guiding principles as kind of a foundational, that's where we want to begin. But how do we move from global guiding principles that are quite vague and not necessarily giving us tools to act? How do we then make decisions? How does the Climate Smart Forest Economy Program make decisions and make assessments? And that led us to developing, list of specific issue areas that are going to be really important. And we'll see issue areas listed like no, not harming habitat, right? Would be in the sort of environmental space. And social space, we have things like not negatively impacting tenure security, not negatively impacting local livelihoods, things like that. So series of safeguards issue areas, including some that are very specific to climate smart forest economies, right? You have the general issues, tenure security, whatever, it applies to everywhere, every kind of intervention, but then you have some that are very specific to forest interventions. So we developed a list of issue areas, and then and in a report, you'll see this all, 2 reports, you'll see this all spelled out, but then we also said, okay, again, not every organization has infinite resources, and yet you still want them to engage in safeguards assessment, right? You don't want them to say, oh, it's too much. I can't do it. I don't have the capacity for that, so I'm just not going to do it, right? You have to think strategically about how am I going to prioritize. And so we develop sort of strategies, or we promote strategies for a risk-based approach to safeguards assessment, and using proxy identification to identify what your high priority or high risk areas might be. And what by that, I mean, you have this list of issue areas that could be important, but your country has really low, has high tenure insecurity, right? And so you might know that's going to be an issue. I need to be able to dedicate resources to investigate my particular intervention to make sure I'm not exacerbating that problem, right? Or on the opposite side, you might say, all of these national indicators are suggesting that illegal deforestation is not really happening in this country. X, Y, and Z issue areas are probably not things that I need to dedicate serious resources to exploring, right? So it's a pretty intuitive approach, and we have sort of a matrix that we developed to help folks look at the trade-offs and prioritize across these issue areas. And then we move into suggestions for assessment and monitoring, especially borrowing some of these existing guidelines that are out there, and saying, this is what I want to monitor. What's the different tool that gives me indicators for doing that, or approaches for doing that? And then it all stems to how do those in procurement and interventions and whatever stage, how do they make claims to being climate smart forest economy interventions, right? And this is really the main motivation of those in the climate smart forest economy program, is they want to be able to make claims that they are respecting these safeguards, they're assessing and monitoring these safeguards, and how do they do that confidently? And so all of these things kind of lead to what we hope is the ability for folks to engage in a way that is appropriate for their level and their capacity, and to make credible claims. So that's kind of an exciting project that looks at forest carbon again from a really different perspective, to say, wait a second, it's not just forest carbon, let's also focus on these other components. And then, yeah, go ahead to the next one, Lauren. And this is the last project I'm going to highlight here. And this is a state level policy tracking and analysis initiative. So initially funded by the Environmental Defense Fund. And what this project is essentially categorizing, tracking, analyzing the different forest carbon policy levers that exist. The objectives of this project in the US, the objectives here are to help decision makers and broader forest stakeholders know what those levers are, and bolster academics regarding this, research regarding this, but also state level peer learning. Part of this stems from some of that engagement that we had, some of those surveys that we had, where folks were saying that they didn't really know what the levers were in their own states, and they definitely didn't know what the levers were being used in other states, right? And so wanting to say, well, here you have this analysis, this carbon modeling that shows X, Y, and Z are activities to engage in. What are the different policies, programs available that different states are engaging in to impact forest carbon? And so this figure here on the right breaks down the primary categories that we're looking at, and that we have this massive database now of these different categories. We look at GHG emissions and energy, direct financial incentives, and forest management, land use, and public procurement. So those broken down have subcategories and subcategories and subcategories. And one that's particularly interesting is forest taxes, for instance. There are all of these preferential tax treatments, 6 of them, and they all operate differently and exist across different states. So the objective here is first to figure out what's going on, put it into a database, and then especially to develop an online dashboard and toggleable maps, which is what we're in the process of doing now, so that folks can use it, learn from it, and then phase 2 after that is to jump more into the analysis of using this pretty impressive research database, jump into the many questions that are springing forward from it. One of them, and I'll have you go to the next slide. One of them, this is kind of a map of the forest property tax programs by state that I just noted. So there are these 6 different types, and you can see that many states have multiple, up to 3 different types of agreements. And so one of the components, the analytical components that we're now jumping into, is looking at what is the compatibility between these forest property tax programs, which are preferential tax programs that reduce your tax burden. What is the compatibility between these programs and forest carbon projects, right? So a lot of the language in these preferential tax treatments is contingent upon harvest, right? So what if you delay harvest? Are you, for that period of time, not eligible for the preferential tax arrangement, right? And so this stems into the, Raju and Shivan's economic analysis of where that cutoff point is. Well, if you're also going to be hit with, now I'm going to have higher property taxes, that is another dimension of it, right? Another cost that'll be incurred by the landowners. So a really kind of exciting space to be jumping into, and a really practical space too, because it is that we're seeing a lot of folks interested in knowing that answer. A lot of folks in particular involved in forest carbon projects, right? And I believe that's all the projects we're going to highlight today. Am I right, Lauren? Is that, did I include one more that I forgot? That's it. So that is, as I say, a sampler platter of the different types of projects we're working with. And you can see they say multidisciplinary, and also funding in partnership with a host of different organizations, including MSU, other academics, various NGOs, conservation organizations, state government, federal government. So we're kind of coming at this question from a diversity of ways, with a diversity of groups, and kind of keeps it exciting, right? So that's all. Then Lauren, any last words?
No, I think that was really great, Kylie. Again, just to kind of reiterate for the group that we had to kind of navigate what's the best slice of projects to present to you all today. We have some other research that we didn't get to elevate today. So definitely encourage you to take a look at our projects and research tab on our website. There might be some other points of overlap there as well. But thanks, Kylie. It's a really nice overview of all that.
Like, any questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the graduate certificate program and expanding to the international, the audience, and you reach to the domestic as well as Hanover. And how about other parts of the world? Do they get the students from?
Yes. So for the graduate certificate, we have students from all over, because that one's all in English. So we don't have the Spanish catering that Lauren provides us there. But no, so right now I'm teaching 833 Human Dimensions of Forest Carbon Management, and that's one of the 3 courses in the grad certificate. And I have students from Africa, Southeast Asia. I think those are the 2, and Latin America, as well as the US. So those are the 3 that are represented now. In every year that I've taught, it's now the 3rd year we've had international presence. And interestingly, folks from, Lauren mentioned, really folks who are professionals in this space, folks who have been doing forest carbon projects, right? As well as folks who, not exclusively, but really coming in from a lot of different backgrounds. And it's a pretty cool space, not only for me, but for the students themselves to engage with each other, to learn from, so-and-so's doing a reforestation project in Oklahoma and someone's here, and how do they learn from each other and whatnot. So it's cool for the students to be exposed to everyone else's projects. And work. Yeah.
When you decide the entire system of how we can be a destination and it's not for the biology or even small public how do you see when you do it in carbon programs?
Well, from a carbon numbers perspective at the state level, we'll see soon. We don't have the model numbers from California, and I think we'll also have that modeling with mass timber in Michigan also. So I'll have numbers to speak to that in the coming months, but not yet. But I think it will be part of I think it will necessarily be part of the portfolio of options, right? We know from the various LCAs, the life cycle assessments that compare mass timber buildings to traditional buildings, that there is an incredible carbon benefit in most cases from that type of construction. And that will undoubtedly carry off to the state level. How large that is to be determined, but certainly there will be a carbon benefit. And I think now so I think that will definitely be part of the suite of, and in addition to just the carbon benefit, states also have an interest in the bolstering forest economies. And so that will be an important part of that also, and from an economic perspective. And so I think there's an interest both from the carbon and economics that align well there.
I have a kind of practical question pertaining to your first bar chart for the project, looking at different state level scenarios of carbon future. I'm not super used to thinking about carbon in the human environment, so I didn't fully understand what you said about the large emissions from the retirement of materials, if I'm correctly. And so I just wondered, I was like curious about how much confidence you would have on a number like that and what you do that. And then also I didn't quite understand how that influenced or was influenced by harvesting. It seems like harvesting diminished that retirement contribution, and I didn't quite get that. So that's my question.
Sure, yes. So the way that we look at this is that that figure is looking at emissions to the atmosphere. And so harvest is not, anything that's harvested and goes into a harvested wood product is not considered emission to the atmosphere. And that would be the harvested wood product pool. The emissions that are leaving that sector happen slowly, depending on the type of product you're engaged in or you're producing. And so anything that is going toward bioenergy is an immediate emission. Anything that's going toward paper pulp is going to be about 2 years. And then on that's the half-life rather. And it's actually, this all varies quite a bit by state in terms of what type of, so if timber really varies depending on whether it's hardwood or softwood. Is it primarily going to pallets or is it primarily going to construction? And so different states have different makeups, but that's what, as that slowly, that which is in the harvested wood product sector, all of this stuff here, as it slowly leaves every year, you have emissions that are primarily leaving from landfills. So that's what that sector primarily, it's almost exclusively, it is exclusively landfills and burning. So that's how it eventually is emitted. And that includes not only carbon, but when it goes to via landfills, we include also methane. And so those are in CO2e to account for that also. That's what the results are. I'm not sure I answered all your questions. Is there a follow with another one? Okay.
A question on RCP reforestation project. that's a lot of trees. Is that mostly softwood plantations or what? Do you know any specifics about what that actually looks like?
So there, yes, Lauren, jump in here if you remember, there were two different, one was going to be a mix and one was like Easter or red pine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little to be determined. But the main idea, kind of the initial idea was to have some areas that would be targeted for probably largely softwood red pine. And then some others would have like a hardwood mix. But also a part of that project is identifying where are the appropriate areas for different types of species or the species mix as part of the project. So that project was awarded and considered innovative because it's kind of breaking up the equip model where individuals apply to the program, where instead it would be kind of like looking at where are there potential opportunities. We will really be targeting what we're hoping is like abandoned or marginal agricultural land that would be appropriate for reforestation. So part of it's like, where is it even appropriate to plant trees at all in these areas? And then what would be the best and most appropriate species mix. But yes, that's what we're targeting, largely red pine and then a bit of a hardwood blend as well.
Thank you.
So, any questions from online?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything there. Kylie, was that to me? I couldn't hear that.
Oh, no question. No.
Oh, okay.
So, that's all. So thank you all for coming. We'll meet for thank you.
Thanks, everybody.